Greetings and welcome everyone to Elm City Lit Fest podcast live. I'm Ife Michelle Gardine, founder of Elm City Lit Fest. Elm City Lit Fest is a celebration of literature, literary arts, and literacy, and literary artists of the African diaspora. So we only do Black lit up in here. And with me this evening are my team, Emily Mayo and Sean McAllister. Hey, y'all. And this evening, we are very, very happy and honored to have with us Tarell McCraney. Hey, Terrell.
How y'all doing?
Emily's going to do a little intro.
Oh, okay. Well, I will sit quietly.
I am?
Okay, you don't have to. You can introduce yourself, Terrell.
Well, cool. I was going to switch it up and have Terrell introduce himself. Just tell us a little bit about your background, what you are doing in New Haven.
My name is Tarell McCraney. I am an alumni of the Yale School of Drama, which is the first time I ever foot strike down in New Haven was interviewing for the Yale School of Drama and a student by the name of Marcus Gardley, who was a playwright at the school at the time, and another student named Rollin Jones. Let me stay in his apartment, and Marcus showed me around New Haven, which I was like mystified at and like, what is this place? I don't know what's going on. But Brother Marcus was just so kind and really, was like, hey, you might want to go down to get a haircut. And sadly, that place closed down. That was the best place to get a haircut back then, but that place closed down. I tried to follow that barber. That's a whole other story. You could tell I miss barbers because I'm like, yo, this pandemic hair is getting to me. I am from Miami, Florida, and I returned to Yale, the School of Drama, to be the chair of playwriting in 2016, and have been there since as the chair of playwriting at the School of Drama. What else? I have known Emily.
Did a little movie.
Oh yeah, I write movies, and I write also other things. I wrote the original screenplay for a play called a script called Moonlight. In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue, which is the basis of Barry Jenkins's Moonlight that became an Academy Award winner was that 2016 too?
Yeah.
2017. I don't remember. I was terrified the whole time. And then I've written a movie called High Flying Bird that's starring Audrey Holland, directed by Steven Soderbergh. There's a television show called David Makes Man that's on the OWN network that is in its that we're working on its second season that I created, and a plethora of plays, notably of which the ones I wrote in New Haven were the ending of the trilogy called The Brother Sister Plays, a play called Wig Out, and a play called in connection with in collaboration with Joe Sutton and Katrine For You. We wrote a play called The Breach, which was about Katrina directly after Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans. And I wrote that actually because Lynn Nottage, who was my teacher at Yale, was doing the project and was like, don't you want to do this project? And I was like, okay, sure.
Opportunities abound. We have a mutual friend in Marcus Gardley. Mm-hmm. When Marcus was at the Yale School of Drama, I produced his play Like Sun Falling from the Mouth. And we did it at the time in the very hot Afro-Am Center for a weekend. And then we packed it up and went down to the National Black Theater Festival in Winston-Salem.
Yeah.
And it was performed there. It was a lovely experience for both the young people, because we had all young people from New Haven working on the production side, and then drama school students working that performed it. And Marcus directed and, of course, wrote it, and we had a good time. And we became really good friends, and they got my wrath because we was like, look, we had to teach the kids real quick, bring it up and bring it down.
Yeah.
So shout out to Marcus.
Shout out to Marcus, man.
So when you were here before in grad school, did you ever think that you would be back at Yale as like an department chair? Like,
that's a good question. I mean, and I'm screwing up my face like this, as my grandmother would say, because I don't really know. I mean, I think I'll tell you what brought me back, and maybe that'll answer the question, which is I realized as I was in the world and doing the thing that I was trained to do as a professional, I was kind of killing myself. Doing that thing that often Black artists are asked to do, which is to do everything, and then do it perfectly all the time, and show up. People were always commenting, "Oh, you show up so early. You're always there." I was like, "I'm not." And I would say to people, I'm not really sleeping well, or I'm not really taking care of myself, or I'm really struggling to like put my life in a kind of balance with all the stuff that I'm doing. And everybody was like, "Oh yeah, the life of an artist, that's amazing." And I kept thinking, why the hell people keep telling me that this is amazing? I'm not like, yes, there are things that are great that are happening in the world. My work is being seen, and yes, I'm being mostly paid to be an artist, and that's great. I'm not, I hear you. If I was making, if I was becoming a billionaire off of what I was doing, I get some of it. But even then, like, is the money worth the kind? I mean, literally, I was going to the doctor every 3 months or so because it's because of exhaustion, and I was killing myself on flights. And anyway, at some point, I just sort of said to myself, where did I learn this? Where did I learn this, like, really great, quote unquote, great work ethic that starves me as a person, but serves me as a person in the industry? And I was like, I think I know where. I think I know. And I had an amazing time. I had an amazing time at Yale, in terms of meeting people like Marcus, like Amy Herzog, like my colleagues and people who I work in network, like Brian Tyree Henry, who I work with continually.
Oh yeah.
Me and Brian went to class and we continue to work together until this day. But I was like, yeah, like I think we can talk about being an artist, being a Black artist in ways that are different. And how can the only way I can do that instructively is to kind of try to shift a program that really that centers the person, as my students say, that centers the people at the heart of storytelling rather than the words on the page, right? As long as you turn in that piece of paper, we kind of get, oh, you turn in this paper, bye, right? But it's like, but then are we not valuing? And then I thought also, like, yo, August was there telling stories all the time. Like, that's what August did. August, I was lucky enough, and James Bundy made a kind of executive decision to make me August Wilson's assistant while he was at Yale, which was the funniest and sort of like haphazardliest thing. I mean, if you know me, you know I'm nobody's assistant. I mean, just should.
And August Wilson was live. Let's be real. That brother.
Yeah, no, there was no. I mean, August would be like, "Hey, go set up, and I need a haircut over here. Those brothers down there, and I need to go get my feet worked on, and so you need to make sure that." And I would be like, "What? What's happening? I'm supposed to do that?" And this was lost all the time. So, the scary thing about that was there were no other Black people in the playwriting department at the time. And so it felt like I had to be good at something that I wasn't, even though, because I was like I was the only one. And there's Michelle Shea and Felicia Rashad, and they're all coming, and Anthony Chisholm, God rest him, who just passed away. And they all are coming into town to see what, how August is being treated. And here I am, terrible, But I remember just thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way to, what August was giving was yes, the plays, which we have as a part of his legacy, and that's great. But the time that he took to, all the artists who came after to the school would be talking about like, August would just sit on the corner and tell us stories for hours. And that's a part of the legacy too. That's a part of the community building. And that wasn't happening inside the playwriting program. We weren't celebrating that portion.
Oh my God.
So that's one of the things that dragged me back.
Okay. Because I was gonna touch on the sterility of Yale, because as a native New Havener, I've known a lot of people come through and they're just very unhappy with their experience and how they're treated. And of course, we're not going to go into my favorite word for Yale, but we move along. So what was, and you touched on it a little bit, what was your expectation of coming in to bring in more students of color, to make it a better experience for them? Because let's face it, they got dinosaurs in a lot of departments in Yale that feel like they do. When people of color come in, they got to do them a favor. And if anybody from Yale is listening, I'm willing to do Yale 101 for y'all. Just let you know. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. I initially, one of the things, and Emily has probably heard me say this a number of times, I sort of didn't realize how much the kind of paralyzed or sterilized, as you said, this kind of would creep into the drama school. Drama school always felt like, oh, we had room and innovation, and I had to compare that to what was actually happening, bureaucratically, right? Yes, the students came in with a whole bunch of energy, but the system itself was kind of always moving in a very similar way.
Right.
And a lot of what we had to do was just assess. I had to take a couple L's, a lot of them, and just be like, oh no, you think for example, there were just so many Black women who had gone through the program who just were like, never. Don't talk to me, don't look at me, don't. And I'm thinking, well, if Black women and Indigenous women are the most marginalized in our society, and they're coming through this program and getting wounded, the hell is going on? What are we doing? Like, what's happening? Like, how do we assess this? And I'm not saying that in the 4 or 5 years that I've been here that I've shifted, but one of the things I had to do is have deep conversations with. I would call up Lynn Nottage and be like, Lynn, what are we doing wrong? Like, how do we give place, give space, give mentorship, give room for these women of color, these Black women? First of all, I was like, let's stop saying women of color, right? I just need to stop because I need to talk about Black women and talk about the fact that, all of the ones that I interviewed in the alumni were like, there were never two of us here at the same time. Which I was like, that's wild. That's wild. What are we doing? What's happening? And then, and so right now, in the program, we have, the majority of the students, all of the students in the playwriting program. Did I go away?
Not yet.
I'm back. All the students in the playwriting program identify as people of color. We have 4 Black women in the program, and it's important to me that we continue to look at and listen to them as they process through, because there are no perfect programs. And the systems in place do cause harm, and we have to go slow. We have to go slow. And when I say go slow, I don't mean go slow in terms of what Nina Simone talked about, Mississippi Goddamn. We don't go slow whenever in any time that they raise their hand to suffering, we don't go slow. We go fast. We move to stop it. They cannot afford any suffering in this program. But that means we can't go business as usual. That means we can't move at the speed of at what we normally do, which is here. We just churn them out, and that's no. We have to slow that down to see.
Oh, he froze.
No.
It was getting good. It was too much for the internet.
Oh, the internet was just like, stop.
Yeah,
It was too powerful. They couldn't take it.
go.
Yeah, but the women we have in our program, they're dynamic. They are they are diverse Black women, right? Like they don't represent any sort of monolith of what people can even think of when they talk about Black women. They come from all walks of life. They come from Tanzania. They come from Atlanta. They come from Pittsburgh. They come from Barbados. They are, to me, what's representative of what we do best in theater, which is provide a space for a safest space we can for the dangerous dialogue and conversations and stories that we need to hear, right? Stories that are going to challenge us and excite us and make us laugh and make us cry. And we desperately try to center those voices. So, I definitely won't be a dinosaur in the program. Like I think there should be term limits to people who run programs. Just because you have to try to go after something, you do as much work as you can, and then you need to move, right? Because the world changes, the world is changing. And there needs to be a constant flow of that energy, especially for artists. Like it's so interesting in an industry full of artists that people love to say, well, this is the way we normally do it. Okay, that's great.
It's about creating constantly. What are you talking about?
You would be surprised. But we're so capitalism has so locked us into a manufacturing mindset. That we think of ourselves as a conveyor belt rather than, a cloud. And clouds always change. You are never going to get the same. I mean, you need rain, but clouds still form in many shapes and ways to give you that same rain.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, I as you know, I work in the theater management department, and that's something I think about all the time. Just like how I as a mentor am, how fast am I moving to spot harm and try and get people out of that situation into a healing space. And two, just how, everything has to change. Like we're not, I mean, we've been doing this for a while, right? Like there's a system. It works, but up to a point, because what is that system based out of, And when you start to dig into that, that's when it's like, yeah, we need to change. There's some problems here. So I'm totally feeling you on that. So we had A.K. Payne on the podcast a few weeks ago, last month. And I remember asking her, how has her creative process changed with COVID and the global impact of Black Lives Matter, and if it's even possible to create in the same way at this time. Do you have any thoughts on that? How I'm calling them the twin pandemics, how they're affecting your creativity?
Well, it's interesting. I think I'm very much, I count myself lucky to be a survivor of the first ongoing pandemic, which is the AIDS HIV crisis, which is still affecting disproportionately the Black community. And then and in fact, today is my mother's birthday, and she died of AIDS-related complications when I was right before I came to Yale. And watching what happened to her, and then I lost her sister this year. in May to COVID-19. And that was one of those moments in life. Again, it's always hard to quantify at the time, but at the same time, there's something in the, like, again, it just keeps looking at black women in my life, particularly speak from a place of I, who are affected most disproportionately by, you know, things that affect the society, but people are sort of like sort of shrugging their shoulders about it, right? You know, by the time I remember Larry Kramer came to New Haven to talk about the AIDS pandemic, and I just sort of mentioned, like, you know, there are those, you know, he was sort of talking about the complacency of folks because of, you know, the retroviral drugs and how people weren't paying attention. And I was like, no, there are those of us in communities who are absolutely paying attention and crying out for help, but we don't get seen or heard. And he sort of like brushed that aside. And God rest him. He was an incredible advocate for, but it's sort of, you know, these black women who, again, these black men, black LGBTQ folks who are disproportionately affected by both pandemics that are still going on. Again, I mean, you know, we have leadership literally saying that, like, oh, well, 90% of people who are affected by COVID-19 survive, and that's great. But, you know, if you look at the 250K who pass away, if you look at almost all of the children who've died, they all look like us.
Right.
And that it starts to feel less and less like a mistake, you know? It starts to feel less and less. And again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think anybody's going around infecting us specific, but we just look at the harms that are happening to our community. And so it just makes me think to myself, well, this is now, again, my charge, my job to, you know, again, I wrote Moonlight, and in Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue right after my mother passed away. And I started writing again, you know, right when my aunt left. I just sort of thought, you can't keep quiet, because they will, as Audre Lorde says, they will count your suffering as joy. They will count your smiling, and they'll look at your suffering and say it, and look at your pain and say it didn't hurt if you don't say anything. I'm paraphrasing badly, but that sentiment stays with me often, and because again, you know, I can mention those things, and I have colleagues who are like, nope, didn't lose anybody. You know, I lost the person who was, you know, the closest to my mother, and it was like losing a parent again. It was like, but that does. I have friends, I have colleagues, I have friends who, you know, especially in other communities, who are like, oh no, I mean, we have people who got sick, but they survived. I'm thinking to myself, that's great. I've heard about and been to a funeral, you know, since May, every other week, every 2 weeks. So anyway, for me, that as a person who is, you know, I'm not the new generation, but I have to talk about what the generations before endured, so that the new generation don't get gaslit, right?
Right.
There's a lot of young people, young activists out there who are on the grounds and going, this is crazy, this is wrong. And I just want to say to them, you know, today marks the 100th anniversary of the massacre in Ocoee in Florida. Today is, you know, the grounds you're standing on, marching on, protesting on, reaching out on, trying to do your best work on, you know, they are lined with your blood. They are enriched with your ancestry. They're there to support you through. And if I can help keep them buoyed up with the stories I can tell, that's been my charge. I really felt like God, the universe has blessed me with a chance to continue being of help, and in that way, I really want to be.
And you speak about helping and teaching. I was watching one of your interviews, and after I watched Moonlight, you spoke about patchwork generosity. You spoke about how you were learning to ride your bike, and then a drug dealer saw you doing it, and then he got up and he helped you. He said, no, this is how you do it, like this. And you spoke about, in the movie, Juan was like a father figure to Little and Chiron, but he spoke about your mother's boyfriend, Blue, and who kind of stepped in as that father figure. And I was watching this interview you had with BBC, and he was like, you know, he was nurturing the father figure, but he was a drug dealer. But you corrected him and you said, and I thought that was powerful because that speaks to the different parts of people. And I'm from Irvington, New Jersey, so my teachers have been very untraditional in that manner as well. I've learned several things from folks who may have been trapping or may have been addicted to drugs, and society has deemed them as this person who cannot teach you anything. But their circumstances or what someone is doing to survive doesn't necessarily negate the wisdom that they can teach to someone. So can you speak about that a little bit, about learning from these untraditional teachers?
I mean, I think you just did eloquently and probably better than I would. I mean, I'm about to cry right now. There, yes, of course, there are moments when you go to, you hope and pray. You go to a school like Yale, or you go to an Ivy League school or any university, and you just hope that you get, some teaching and some wisdom. But yeah, if you can't look, I mean, it's one of the things Marcus Gardley and I used to talk about, which is like, when we go out on the corner and the majority of the people look like us, and they are suffering, though that suffering is happening. And then you go into class and then you try to talk about how you're going to try to reach an audience that don't look like you. That's a lesson. That's a lesson right there. You're being taught. Those people on those corners who are looking for generosity and are teaching you even now. Mother Teresa has a saying that I'm going to butcher terribly, which is like, every person you meet, every challenge that they bring, and each one of them a Jesus among us, right? Each one of them is a teacher. Each one of them has a chance to get us closer to the nurturing of and ministry of that good news. And I grew up in a neighborhood that I wouldn't have learned I learned these. It's funny because people will say, you wrote these plays, you write stories about the African Ifa, where did you study them? Where did you get them? And I was like, well, I grew up around Haitians and Cubans. And so it's like my Caribbean background, my Black ancestry, my Black African-American ancestry has those stories embedded in the stories they tell, in the Zora Neale Hurston stories that are passed down in Florida on the muck, that have come down through Miami, through farming and labor and labor workers and prison camps, like the stories of Shango and Ogun and Belwan Samdi, and they are infused in all of the sort of folklore that I grew up in, and so I learned them. I learned them from my people. That's where I learned them from. I learned them from. And again, I don't know that they were, I'm sure there are people who are like, well, you should have traditionally got it this way. It's like, yeah, I should have, but I got it. This is how I got it. And I'm excited about that. So like, you can never, it becomes hard to discount those lessons. When walking down the street, somebody's passing you on these amazing stories. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I could smell the ocean from Liberty City, which is easily, deeply not nowhere near nobody's shore. And there was this Santero who was like, you can smell the ocean, can't you? And I was like, yeah. He was like, that's Yemaya calling you. And I was like, who? But I don't know what that is. Right. So there and again, as a curious person, I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I'm gonna find out. And I think you kind of, yeah, like you put it way better than I'm even doing now. There's just lessons for us in being deeper and more aware. And I think the moment we start separating those, right? We start going, yeah, they taught me how to ride a bike, but they were a drug dealer. Like, what does that that don't stop me from learning how to ride the bike.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, what? So why separate that? What does that have, what does that have to do with the kind of that he was still generous enough to stop doing this thing that even he thought was not good for the community, to do something he thought was good. And can they both exist? Absolutely. And therein is the lesson. Such a beautiful lesson of like, what, as you said, what we do to survive is indicative of what we're doing to live.
Right. And it would be shameful to discredit those lessons we've learned in this non-traditional way. I think, is it messing up? Is it clear now? It's cool? Okay. Right. So yeah, I think to discredit that is to not do it justice, is to kind of be ungrateful. I think we're in a unique situation that in poverty, in oppression, that we can still learn from each other and still grow in these. I think about my life. I wouldn't have wanted any other way. I think about folks who didn't grow up in a bustling neighborhood or like a city or a hood. Like the suburbs are cool, but there's so many facades that you got to put on just to maintain that white picket fence, but that's neither here nor there. But I wanted to ask you about being vulnerable, and how was this experience for you? How has this journey been? We don't really speak about vulnerability in Black men, and especially in our young men. So as a man who has grown over time, how has vulnerability impact you? And later in your life, how have you shaped vulnerability so that you control it, so that it's not kind of overtaking you, but you're using it to your advantage?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I teach myself is controlling emotions is it's like trying to control symptoms. Like if you have a cold, you can take all the medicine you want to stop the sneezing, but you still got a cold. And until your body decides to get rid of said cold, you still got a cold, right? And so the majority of the time, and I shouldn't say majority, because there was a time that, like you said, early in my time as a young man, I was like, just gotta stop feeling sad. Just gotta stop. I gotta put on armor so nobody can see that I'm actually distraught. And eventually I was like, oh no, I'm upset. And I don't know why. Let me take a minute to see what the cold is. Let me see what this is a symptom of, right? I'm emotional because I'm about to cry because of something. Let me see what that is. Let me stop myself, not stop the emotion, not try to control it. Just let me see what the root of it is. And sometimes when you get to that root, you go, oh yeah, shit is bad. I need to cry. Like the gospel says, trouble in my way, I gotta cry sometimes. Sometimes it's and that's all right. Like sometimes and so that to me is one of those lessons that just became, was there all along, but just I didn't know it. And to this day, that's, even if I'm anxious. Why am I'm anxious? Let me think about. Oh yeah, well that would make a person anxious. It's okay to be anxious about that. Then there are moments when you get to something, you go, oh, I'm not really anxious. I'm anxious about that because that's how I would used to feel. I'm a grown person now, right? And I don't have to worry about that because I can say no. I know I can be like, or I can walk away. I can take myself out of that situation, and then I feel relieved because I go, oh, I'm grown. But vulnerability has its place. Vulnerability is the thing that allows us to connect. It allows us to engage, and if we mask it over in some way, and also be able to be wrong. I think people think, I know I've had students in the past who I will say, oh, I messed up. I'm sorry. That was my fault. I'm sorry. Let me try to rectify that. And they take that as oh, you don't know what you're doing, because they've never had a person say, I'm sorry to them before. They never had a person say, no, that was my fault. I'm gonna fix that. All they've had is, well, I'm the professor and you get it. You do what I do. Right. I hear the lessons that I learned. I'm sorry, Ife, you want to say something?
No, that what on that note that you said that, I was going to ask you what was your experience with working with coming into the drama school at Yale as the chair with people that may have that mentality, because it's an Ivy League university. I worked at two plantations of this world, Columbia and Yale, and it's very similar. Academia creates this I know it all. I'm telling you, and even in areas where there is art, it's supposed to be a creative space. It's limiting, and Black people do not always find support or the support that they need within that. So have you dealt with it, like from the chair position to the staff, and encouraging them to be more supportive of the students that are Black?
Well, the first thing is we changed what we talked about in the interview process. I noticed that I mean, every student that has come to our program has been talented. They just have. It's irrefutable. But there are a lot of talented, not nice people in the world. There are a lot of talented, not community-oriented people in the world. They're not, and if the program boasts, the School of Drama boasts that its main focus is collaboration, you need to bring in people who are community-centered. And so a lot of what happens, and I think people got a lot pissed off when I said this, is like, our interview process is pretty laxed comparatively, because we do two things. We read for talent, we read the application, and again, we get a lot of talented folks applying, and that's great. And then we get to these interviews, and in the interview, it's not about the talent anymore. The first thing I ask is, are you ready? Do you want to come to uphold and contribute to community learning, to collaboration? And you would be surprised how many people show themselves in that moment.
Wow.
You would be surprised how many people are like, I'm here to get mine. You would be surprised. And listen, there's nothing wrong with that. That's not the program I run. That's not the program I run. There are many people who and it's funny. Some people, like, they can't even hide it. They can't even hide the fact that, like, look, I just want the resources so I can get to point A to point B, and I want my next play to be on Broadway 7 times. And I'm like, cool, that's great. That is, that's an outcome. That's not the aim of the program. The aim of the program is to make a space for those people who have talent and have genuine want to grow their voices and may not have had an opportunity to do that. May have had an opportunity to really get in and learn some tools and get some structure around this really powerful voice that they have, and so that they can walk into their next community, they can walk into their next collaboration with a kind of confidence, right? I've explored my voice. I know what I'm after. I'm seeking some big questions. I know who I'm seeking to do that collaboration with, and I know who I want to talk to, right, in that collaboration. And if that is people on Broadway, great. If that's your community in, Peoria, Illinois, that's great too, right? And you have to be able to want to be in a neighborhood or in a community that has room for all of those folks and is making space for all of those voices. And if you don't, this might not be the program for you. And that kind of ruffled a lot of feathers because there were students who were already there who were like, nah, I'm here to win. And I was like, yeah, cool, great. And you will win. You're gonna win. But when that day comes that you are winning and you don't have anyone to your left or right that feels like community, or you sacrificed, your health and your ability to love yourself or your ability to create loving relationships for that, I want you to remember that I told you to take the time to do that. Or if that's where you want to be in life, fantastic. But I think we can teach. We had a conversation the other day in class about teaching joy.
Mm.
One of our students brought up the fact that we should, that we need to teach joy, and it shook me because I was like, oh shit, am I teaching joy? And we had some other students who were like, well, we don't think you can teach joy. I was like, I don't know, because I remember looking at my grandmother getting happy, and I felt like she was teaching me joy. Right? I remember looking at my mother turning on a song and lip syncing and then singing to full capacity and pulling us up to dance. I feel like that was teaching joy. Like, I can do that. I can make myself vulnerable enough to, in my class, teach how it's joyous for me to do this work, where it's joyous to do this work. And by watching that, people can learn, oh, that's how he gets joy. Let me find my pathway to joy. I can't teach your joy, but I can show joy. I can teach joy. And I was like, I was like, yeah. And so, things like that some people don't think that belongs in a playwriting program. People think I need to be teaching structure, which I do, teaching them like, hey, how do I navigate this contract to do Y? And I'm like, I do that too. But if the majority of what I'm teaching is that,
it handicaps them later on.
Maybe or maybe not. Look, there's an industry that I want to go into, and there's an industry that I don't want to go into. And I fight with the industry that I don't want to go into all the time because they are consistently in my face talking about like, you need to do this, you need to do Y. And I'm like, no, are you paying me more money than I've ever had? And that will change the trajectory of my entire generational poverty? No, right? If people think they give you a little check and they're like, oh, well, we just changed your life. Yeah, but I got 4 generations of poverty behind me. You want to get them too? You can't? Cool. Stop fronting. Right? Stop fronting like that check's going to do it. Because I know I got to go home to that. You don't. Right? Or is whatever you're forcing me to do going to change the prison industrial complex that is, locked up most of my family, the poverty line that has kept my family in bad health and, without access. If it's not going to do any of that, then I actually do have a choice. I can say no and stay my same poor black ass self, right? So, but I want an industry where people like A.K. Payne, who is, an amazing, not only just amazing student, but amazing collaborator, an amazing voice, feels like she is creating work that is nurturing her and nurturing the community she wants to be in. That's the industry I want to create. And, there's already that other industry out there. I don't have to do anything to make that. It's there. There's a whole development structural, but there's a whole other place that has either been forgotten or has been neglected that I need to pour into. And so that to me is the more exciting. Again, I'm about innovation. Anyway, I done been talking. Y'all talk.
That's what we're here for, to hear you. That's what we're here for. This is enriching conversation. We are so grateful for this. What came to mind is so how did the Terrell that was August Wilson's assistant evolve to the Terrell now? Like what kinds of things kind of happened? A little snippets of what happened to this journey.
I went out into the world again, dumb, and just thinking like, hey, I did all this great stuff, or I'm doing all this great stuff. Here's, the world I should work in. And I think to me, one of the things that was revelatory was I was like, oh, I'm getting a lot of these opportunities because so I remember we did one of my plays at the Cabaret. I'm going to say it's at the Cabaret, but I might be wrong, right? Probably was at the Cabaret. And August showed up. But August didn't just come by himself. He brought James A. Williams. He brought Michelle Shea. He brought Anthony Chisholm. He was like, we all going to see Terrell's play. And they all came to see the play. And so, there are people sitting around who I'm like, oh, these are amazing people. And again, I love August, and August introduced me to some great people, but it wasn't just August. He brought his community to my community. And when I look back over my life, the little time that I've had, and I turn around, it's actually those connections that that community that has like said something to someone here that got me to a place, right? Said something to a producer that was like, hey, you should support this person. And then they were like, okay, cool, we're going to write a check for him to do his work at X, Y, and Z. James Williams did that for me. Felicia Rashad did that to me for even now. I mean, even now she will show up and just be like, he's amazing. You should do anything. I mean, that it's just you to me, and to me that I'm more interested. I'm grateful for all the things that led me to. It also led me to be in front of some, in some white environments that were just not good for me and that I couldn't sustain. Like I just couldn't sustain. And that's the thing that I try to talk about, which is sustainability. I could do it for a year or two or for 3, but there was just the constant harm that kept coming in. I was going to leave with more. I wake up, I have more sleepless nights about those years between 2007 and 2016, that when I was doing, I mean, they're just so many. I mean, I don't even talk about them, but they wake me up at night. From the actors who would go to artistic directors because I didn't know what I was doing, to artistic directors who were telling me, look, we only hired you because, you Black and we needed a Black spot. You know what I mean? Like the kind of just denigrating of voice. And I kept being like, well, I know this isn't what they signed me up for. And why aren't I just constant? Like I want to be around those people all the time. Where can I go and be around the people who we want to engage? And so eventually I got to a point where I started just pulling my people to me. I was just like, oh, hey, I know, Andre Holland and I started working together in 2007, 2008. And I was like, hey, fam, don't go nowhere. I know you're busy, but I'm going to call on you 70 more times. The same thing with Brian Tyree Henry. I was like, hey, man, I know you got things to do. Yes, go be on Atlanta. Also come hang out with me. I'm going to have something for you to do. You know what I mean? Sterling Brown, the same thing. John Hill, Alana Arenas. We just Kimberly Abair. We just kept, you kind of keep just pulling people. Marcus Gardley. Marcus and I are finally getting to write stuff together. That's the other thing. You'd be like, hey, how come you can't write with the other talented Black men that you know? Like, how come that never happens? And it's like this weird thing. And we've been like, and I would go to producers and be like, hey, he's, and can we be in a room and write together? And they'd be like, well, just never happened. It's like they think you put us in a room, things would explode or something. Like it's like a physics law. These two Black objects can't occupy the same Black space at the same Black time. That's crazy. And I think it's just wild to me. And it seems revelatory to other people, but I'm at a point where I'm sort of I'm calling in. I'm just like, hey, how can I be supportive? How can I make more space for us? Even if it's small, even if it's just a week or two, we get together and we read a play together. What does that do? People don't recognize that even that has an enriching, it's nurturing, it's nutrients for us. And it gives us the strength to kind of be out in the wild a little longer. So that's the real shift that's happened. I no longer am like, yeah, I'm gonna go do this show I'm like, hey, yeah, that's cool. Is that gonna leave scars? Because I don't want it if it is.
I love that. I love how you are evaluating the cost. Like folks are giving offers, but what is this gonna take from me? What is this? Like this check looks great, but what is this going to take from me emotionally, spiritually? What am I going to have to give up? And can I sleep at night knowing that I did that? And I love that. You're bringing in folks who were left out. You're redefining what they think, who can write with who. Like there's not one seat at the table. There's several seats. There are chairs. People make chairs. You can bring your own chair. You can make your own table.
The table don't even have to be elevated. Word. Like, have you ever, picnic tables, fam, or you can spread a blanket on the floor.
That's a table. Grandma's pallets at the house.
Let's eat.
Everybody pick a cover. Another thing that's not really shown is intimacy. And Moonlight showed a lot of intimacy amongst Black men. Like, even when Little was still little and his homeboy helped him out, and they were like, it's like, why are you letting him pick on you? And it was like, I don't know. It's like, you gotta show these niggas you ain't soft. I know you're not soft, but you gotta show them you're not soft. And then when Chiron got to high school and the whole experience at the beach, and then when he got older and Kevin cooked for him, there's a lot of body language in intimacy. And there's a lot of body language in Moonlight. You could see, yes, Black had this masculine facade. You know, he had the grills, he had the car. But if you constantly looked in his eyes throughout the movie, you can see who he really was and how he really was feeling. So can you kind of shed some light on the importance of intimacy and that how, I'm not a Black man, but how Black men can navigate that and not to be ashamed of intimacy? Everyone deserves intimacy and what it may look like for them.
I mean, it goes back to, I think it was your question about vulnerability. I mean, it's just you. I mean, one of the reasons why, you know, and Barry, we have to, you know, shout out Barry, Scorpio season, Barry Jenkins, Scorpio. You know, his amazing ability to capture and cast that movie along with Yessi Ramirez. When they cast Trevante, he wasn't looking for an exterior that represented masculinity. But Trevante has that thing that you talk about, which is like you look in his eyes and like you can see there's something wanting, calling in there. And he and Barry and I had talked maybe 2 years prior. And one of the things that he even talks about now is that I can be very walled off. Like if you meet me, I'm very shy. If I'm not talking about art, if you see me walking down the street and you be like, hey, Terrell, I'll be like, what you want? Hey, how you doing? You know? And that's from, you know, it's again, talking about years and years of just looking out for people trying to come at you all kinds of ways, right? And so you build a facade. Sometimes you build a facade that's grills and a big white tee. Sometimes it's muscles. Sometimes it's, and particularly dark-skinned Black men are asked to masculate, which I don't know if it's a word, but they are asked to facade in a way to ward people off. And then you spend the rest of your life wondering why the intimacy you seek is never there. And I find, that past sex, or even before it, or wherever outside of sex, there is an intimacy that we all want and need, and that to me is just always, you know, it's interesting the ways in which our society, which is about manufacturing, like the ways in which you have to again, count it all joy for Black people, because we have so many blocks in front of us, but we find these ways of being connected together that are so profound and sometimes so simple, but sometimes they go around things, right? You ever seen Black men compliment each other? Oh, I see you, fam. Nah, that's you, big man. Like, what?
We got language.
Or it's like a head nod. Just say you look good. You can't say you look good. Nah, I can't do that because society tell me they ain't gonna do it right. But I see you, fella. You got a big man. Oh, nah, you see it. Hey, man, I'm trying to be like you. I'm just trying to be like you, big dog. I'm like, what? And yet, you know, those are the most tender people. Keep that with themselves. They hold that with themselves. And so I'm always interested in the ways in which we are trying to stay connected, though we are told and taught to stay apart.
I want to go back to your time at YSD with August Wilson and also, you know, renowned director Lloyd Richards. I think I remember you telling a story about when August Wilson sent you to the mall.
Yeah. He didn't send me to the mall. He sent me to Best Buy.
Oh,
I was so pissed.
Can you tell me that story? Tell us that story.
Course. Sure, of course. It's one of my favorite stories to tell. So again, I was a very bad assistant to the late great August Wilson. Narda Alcorn, who is now chair of of stage management here at YST, was the stage manager for Radio Golf. And she can attest that I was really bad as an assistant. Like, I just wasn't good. But either way, August would call with these kind of weird demands all the time. And I'd be like, what? What is this, man? What does he want? Like, what? Does he know I have class in school? Like, I'm here for the school. Like, I have class. I'm tired. Anyway, he texted me one day. He was like, hey, I need you to go get a gift for my daughter. It's her birthday. I need you to go buy an iPad, an iPod. And this is when iPods had just come out. So the nearest Apple store is in Purchase, New York. Like, we didn't have one in New Haven at the time. So I was like, I don't drive. So I was like, I'm not going to Purchase to get no damn iPod. So I was like, where can I get one? And I found out that they had them at Best Buy. And I was like, cool. So I was like, hey, I don't know if you understand. And this is before the playwriting department at Yale is fully is a stipended program now. But that's because when I was there, it was not stipended, and I ain't never had no money. So I was like, sir, I don't know if you think you're gonna reimburse me, but I don't have no money to be buying nobody's iPod at this. I mean, they were expensive back then. They would cost as much as an iPhone. So I was like, I don't got it. Remember, this is 2006, 2005, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, yeah, but he's like, okay, well, I'll meet you somewhere. So I met him at Atticus or something, and he hands me this envelope full of 20s that's like $500. And I was like, sir, I don't know if they cost that much, but also you gave me an envelope full of money. Like, what are you trying to get me robbed? Am I being set up? What is happening here?
But that was August Wilson. That's how he was. He was just like.
I love that man. I really did. And he knew how to get on my nerves. I was like, again, amazing. So I went to get this damn iPod, and I go to Best Buy, and I was like, look, give me the best iPod that you have. And the dude was like, are you sure? I was like, yep, the most expensive, with all that. The insurance, the buyback rebate, the whatever. Put it on it. And he was like, okay. And I was like, cool, bless. So I got this big ass iPod, and I'm like, cool, I'm now late. I had one of my friends drive me to Best Buy in Orange, and like we got the thing, and we came back, and I went to August, and he was in rehearsal, and I just put it on his I was like, here.
I gotta go to class.
I have class now that I'm late for. Thank you. And so I went to class, and he texted me again. He's like, I need to see you. Something's not right. And I was like, what the? How you broke the iPod that fast, fam? He's like, I just gave it to you. You didn't have to take it out the box. Like, just leave it inside. Oh God. So then we go to Book Trader, and he's sitting outside in the cold smoking. And I'm thinking to myself, sir, like, you out here smoking shit. It's cold. I'm from Florida. This is weather. I don't know how this works. And he sits me down, and he August is talking and smoking at the same time. He's like, hey, you got a lot of heart in your work, and sometimes you blow up things when you don't have to, and you young players, y'all like to blow things up. And I'm like, where's this going? What's happening? And he's like, but you got music in your work, and you always need music in your work. So here's your iPod. And he gives me the iPod that I just bought, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, oh my God, you just made me buy my own iPod. And then I looked inside, and there's all these people who are all his cast. They're laughing at me because I'm sitting here holding this thing, and I'm like crying because I'm like, I didn't have any musical apparatus. And I was just like, he was like, you always, and then he sent me like all this music from the Gullah Islands, from the Bahamas. He's like, these are your people. You need to tell their story. And I'm just sitting here like, what the hell? So, I had that iPod until I graduated. And then I went to Sundance, and it died. That was like, I'd run it out. And I remember putting it in like a cement case, and I buried it in the river at Sundance because I was like, I know August would have loved this place, like a place for writers that was and I buried it there. I mean, I don't know if that was biodegradably right, but that's what I did. I cemented it though, but I put it down there but that, yeah, I remember that.
You didn't get the chance to go.
What a beautiful story.
Thank you for telling that story.
Thank you for sharing that. In that light, and as we are winding down, what would be your advice that you would give to playwrights coming up that may want to apply to Yale program or any other program in a white space where they may not have as much support or see people like them? They're going to be a fly in the buttermilk. Let's face it. Sometimes.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I think it's always important to know. I find that students who know that they're coming to build themselves in order to build further something they've already started do better. Students who sort of come hoping that they're going to be built into something usually find it harder. But I find my students who go, no, I know I have a community that I love, that I want to be a part of, or this is a community that I want to grow with. That they always, because they have a purpose and a goal, it feels it's easier for them to help to navigate those programs. So find a mentor, find a voice, find an anchor that you can keep talking to and keep in dialogue with to check check your heart, check your growth, and I think that's how you will prosper or be successful.
Terrell,
amazing.
Much appreciation, bruh, for this. Much appreciation. We're looking forward to whatever you have coming out.
Oh, thank y'all. Please invite me back. I would love to come back and hear y'all talk more about other things. So.
Okay, we can talk about the plantation of Yale all day.
All right. You're up for it.
I'm here for it.
I'm still trying to get them to do, listen, somebody listening, I will do New Haven 101. I'll set that up. They need to have somebody that's real doing New Haven 101. Not somebody that's going to tell you stay outside the bubble of the people that are helping you in the bubble.
Oh, for sure.
But at any rate,
this has been amazing.
We have to check out.
We're going through a lot over here. Like, this is
all right, but we about to I think our rent's up. So
it's worth it. It's worth it. I appreciate it.
So this is Ife from Elm City Lit Fest, and Emily and Shaw, and our guest Tarell McCraney. We are going to say good night, everyone, and thank you for joining in. We got a few comments in the Facebook chat, and we appreciate everyone. And we look forward to more Black Lit.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh my God.